Hey everyone, it's Shawn McBride. Welcome to another one of our interview series where we're talking to business authors about how they connected their book to their business plan. Today we got Dean Lindsay. He's a really smart guy. He's done a good job of this. He uses his books to get speaking, to do other things to build his business, to really make it part of his overall brand and his overall message. So I think you're going to get a lot of great lessons from this today. Of course, all of this is being conducted. We're doing these interviews. You can check all of those out on the McBride for Business YouTube channel. All the raw interviews will be there. And then we're going to take the best lessons, best stories, ideas, and put them all together and condense them into a book at the end of this, where we'll bring those lessons to you in a more usable format so that you can then do the things you need to do to commercialize your book. So we're hoping this helps kick a lot of people into the author category. Dean Lindsay popping up on the screen with us now. You've done a couple of books now. You're deep in this world. Let's just open with kind of a general question. I mean, what has being an author done as far as your business?
Big deal. When I first started, I first, as a speaker, I'm a professional speaker, trainer, executive coach, has kind of come in there as well. But when I first started, even after I had a really great speaker demo, it wasn't until my first book and how I not only wrote a good book, but packaged it really good, did I start getting the bureaus involved in selling bulk copies and things of that nature, and it just kept going from there. But the real thing was not just having a book, but having a well packaged book to where it could make some good things happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you've done a good job of kind of tying the themes of your books into your speaking and kind of making a total package for your clients. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's vital that you try to come up with a topic. People talk to me a lot about writing books, and then they want to write book on about the certain one certain thing. And I'm like, I mean, that's cool and have fun with that, but I didn't try to write a book that I needed to write. I tried to write a book that was going to be helpful to my prospects and clients, which meant that that i.e. they were going to need the book, i.e. and me, to talk about it. And I tried to write. So it was a lot of research around certain things, but I bulk, my books in with, speaking gigs. Sometimes, a little bit now, still back of the room sales, but no, it's usually either. All the books have some form of a half day and full day training program that you could do based on it. But here in these last several years, I've been more of a platform speaker, kind of, more of a thought leadery, type of thing where people get the book afterwards. One other cool thing, though, I'll say, Shawn McBride, is that I've been doing a lot of encouraging, like if they're going to have a conference with associations, I've been the one to say, hey, if you snag these books, I'll send them to you early. You can get your event logo and stick it right there on the cover. Everybody has this, wants to do the swag bag. And people don't throw away books. So we've even had sponsors. We've even found, and one of the people that might be in the trade show, we did that too, where everybody got a book, but the only way they got a book was coming to visit a certain booth where I was going to be there, signing copies. Fast Signs International did that. So I mean, there's a lot of different things. Once you get the book, there's a lot of different ways to play it.
Yeah, and I think that, and I've talked to people obviously all along the spectrum. Speaking to somebody a couple weeks ago, a guy was on his podcast. We got talking about books afterwards. He's like, never do a book. He's like, you don't make money off the book. Hated the idea of a book. And I do hear that from some people. And I think the people that say that generally haven't thought about how to connect it together, right? It's just most people aren't going to make a fortune off the book itself. They make it off the business connections from the book and how you make it a bigger part of your whole business process.
Yes. Now, it is absolutely true, especially my first book back in 2005, Cracking the Networking Code. If I hadn't written it as a book, if I had stretched it out and made it 14-point font and put all sorts of things, I could have turned it into a, $250 workbook and all that type of thing. But then you might make more per copy, but you're not gonna get on the stage. It's not going to help you from you got to know what your business model is. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm an hour and a half, is really my sweet spot at a conference and stuff. And so that's how I wanted to be positioned. But that's also not true. Sometimes you can, I mean, I've sold my second book, we sold 27,000 copies in one deal, one time.
Yeah.
How about that? Now it was
Well,
a greatly reduced price, per copy. It wasn't like it was all retail, but no, you can still make some money off of a book.
yeah, I get it. Yeah, some people, you get the right topic, the right audience, you get it out to the right buyer, and you make some money off of it. But most people are connecting it to a bigger business, like you've done.
I'm absolutely connecting it to a bigger business. It can be done. The other thing that I'll share is, and it really I want to share about the packaging part of it. I don't release a book out into the world until it's got some really cool endorsements, maybe a cool forward, stuff like that. And that's how, from the very first book, I got connected to J. Conrad Levinson from Guerrilla Marketing. He wrote the forward to my first book. That's timeless.
Yeah.
He called me the master of progress. That's timeless. I wouldn't have get that if he hadn't endorsed. I had Ken Blanchard endorse the both first two books. Brian Tracy, the great Vince Pacenti wrote the forward to this last book. So you try to get packaged in with other people, because I did a deal, or I was a choice between me and a couple of people for a deal with True Value. Mm-hmm. And while I was being interviewed, they went to my website, found Creating Progress in a World of Change, and said, "Oh, you know Vince Pacenti? He wrote the forward to your book. We had Vince last year." 30 minutes later, hey, they'd like to book you.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes it's part of that greater connection, right?
It's just a part of that greater buzz, and that, hey, you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this, recently. One of our guests is, a lot of times you can use the fact that you're an author to kind of network with other authors to build a community, and then that often leads to business in itself too, right? Knowing the other authors, being in the discussions, getting the podcast interviews, getting the connections to the clients, right? Just knowing other people and being in the mix helps a lot.
Absolutely. But you do need to be, they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. You know why they say that?
Why?
Because people do.
They do.
And they will forever. Yeah. So do not put the book into the world without a kicking butt cover.
Yeah. I think that's a great tip, because think about it ourselves. I know I'm doing it. I'll go through a bookstore or whatever, and you see a really neat cover with something that just kind of resonates with you, and you're like, hey, I gotta go check that out, right? And it really does help sell books.
And not only sell books, but a lot of people, some people are going to read my book. Mm-hmm. More people are going to buy my book, but most people are just going to see the JPEG cover of my book.
Right.
Right. That book exists and will always exist. And so, I put my covers up against anybody. Yeah. I like my covers.
You've done a great job there. You've got some nice pizzazz there. I guess it also helps with your message. Let me put that shot back out there, and I'll ask you.
Yeah, the Creating Progress one. I like the Creating. Yeah. The same guy did both of them. And he's just, So, anybody who gives me a call or whatever I'm happy to share my contacts and all that stuff.
Yeah, like we were talking about, clean and neat. It really gets along that message that, hey, this guy's organizing as what he's doing, right? These are kind of things I'm just picking up off cues off your cover.
Yeah. And then I don't promote the first book anymore because a little bit of stuff's out of date, and I don't really talk on that topic anymore. But back to that first book, Cracking the Networking Code. There's a picture of me. The cover above me, it says has Brian Tracy's endorsement, and below me says forward by J. Conrad Levinson, the author of Guerrilla Marketing Movement. So, how do you feel about Dino now?
Right, exactly. You've built a lot of credibility up.
Just without you even buying the book.
Right. And I think that's a great point you make with your first book versus your other books, right? Sometimes books are for a season, right? And sometimes, the market moves and the topics move and you evolve. So you don't necessarily have to commit to life. You just use it as a tool for whatever period is appropriate. I've seen a lot of authors take older books out of print, and they have them, but they don't really promote them anymore.
You want to hear a secret?
Sure.
Don't tell anybody.
Okay, we won't tell anybody. It's just here on the internet for all the world to know.
My second book, which came out in 09-10, was called The Progress Challenge. Mm-hmm. And in that book, I swung for the fences. It is great. It has got so much stuff in there. But the last third of that book is all around goals and goal setting. Well, you can only put one title on a book. And so that book came out into the world, and I was like, you know what? I overshot. I put too much in this book. So I retired that book and rewrote it, spread it out into 2 books.
Oh, there you go. I mean,
Those 2 books, that's really the first 2/3 of the Progress Challenge, and that's the last third without the concept of fat. And then I spruced it up a little bit and made it a little bit better. But I just retired that book. So I only had a couple people go, "Oh, I really loved the Progress Challenge. I can't wait to read this book, Creating Progress in the World of Change." And I had to call them up and say, "Hey, I think you'll like it, but it's a lot of the same stuff."
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't ever package, like the Progress Challenge. It's not even on my website. I mean, you cannot. The only place to get that is somebody else's copy on Amazon. I do not. I would never package those. The Progress Challenge in the. I don't even talk about it on the website. I don't claim it as a book, that I wrote. But it did exist like that. But it's my intellectual property. It's my cool. My way of looking at stuff. And so I rolled it back out.
Yeah.
And then to finish with that.
Yep.
Shawn, this book won the Big Fat Goals, which was kind of lost in the back third of the Progress Challenge, turned around and won Business Class News Editor's Choice Book of the Year in 2018.
Yeah, and I think it connects to the idea too with the books is, sometimes you'll write a first book, you'll do something, and you just learn from what people were talking about, what ideas you want to develop, what the market needed, right? So you evolve. And so I think that's one thing probably a lot of people are afraid of when they write their first book or they get into the book process is they're afraid they're going to be locked in forever, but that's not really the case.
Far from it, good sir. Far from it.
Yep. So what were some of the big surprises? So you talked about how you kind of kicked up to another level. I found it interesting how people just treat you differently because you're an author. What were some of the surprises you had maybe after you wrote the book, finally got it published? What were your surprises?
Well, I concur with you on the being an author thing. The people there are they're quite, impressed with that. And what kept me grounded on that part was many, 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 many years when I was first starting to thinking about getting going. I went to a big conference, and I was, way back in the back, and this woman and this man and woman were up there kind of co-hosting, and she said, "And be sure and come back to my booth after this event and get a copy of my book." And I went, "Oh, she's an author. She wrote a book. She's an author." And then I went over to the trade show part, and I was walking around, and I saw her. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I want to go check out this lady and check out her book." And she had taken, this is like, 2001. She had taken 8.5 by 11 paper, folded it in half, put staples on the side. It was about 12 pages. Now it was 24. And those old publisher icons. And it was like a quote and then one of those pictures and those type of things. And that was her book. That was her book. So since that time, I've always had so when Dino says he wrote a book, I'm standing behind my book. So all books aren't, created equal. So I keep a pretty level head about somebody if they're just impressed with me because I am an author. Now, if they'll call me up and read it and have, say, "Yeah, man, that was really cool. I got that a lot with the first book." Then I take that to heart, But to answer your question that you originally asked, which is what I was been surprised, is really the long tail of a book. Just how once it's out there in the world, you never know how it can pop back up and be of service to you because it was of service to somebody else. People, as I stated already in this interview, people don't throw away books. People will take your book from office to office and opportunity to opportunity. And so I had one time where somebody had one of my books for 6 or 7 years and moved from office to office. And then when she got on the board of some association, she suggested me because she remembered me from years and years ago. And I guarantee you, without that book, she wouldn't have remembered me as clearly. It's a great reminder to people, and we continue on. They see other speakers and they just kind of fall away, but a book can help you kind of be somewhat timeless in their mind. I just made that up, but that's good. Somewhat timeless in their mind. How about this? I want to tell you, I'm auditioning to get into the book. That's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to give out the good stuff. I'm like the Dean Lindsay chapter in this book that I'm hearing about.
There you go. You're doing good. You're bringing us great value, right? I mean, you're helping people. That's the key.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that is true. And one thing I've talked to different people about is, there's lots of different books, right? I mean, you can have kind of these every once in a while, we get one of these books that's just like a blockbuster and it's a game changer, and the whole business world just turns around it. But a lot of times you just build a book for what you talked about, right, Dean? You enhance your concepts, you allow people to go deeper in your work, and you allow people to remember who you are, right? So there's different objectives for different books.
Yes, there's different objectives, and we do, of course, everybody would love to, everybody, as soon as you try to get a book out, everybody talks about, oh, you're going to get on Oprah, and, I try to go for there's a lot of other, and a book should, even though they do have some form of a timeline, they're also, new to the person who's just now hearing about it. So, I mean, I'm very proactively marketing, both, the big fat goals and creating progress in a world of change. And I used to get tied up, especially in the first book, tied up into its ranking on Amazon and stuff, but I don't put near as much. Haven't looked at it in months. I don't care. For me, it's really about having a value add to offer to clients, and being of service. But honestly, I would love for everybody to actually read my book, but most people don't. I'm not saying they don't read Dean Lindsay books. They just don't read. But I mean, we have our highest of intentions, and I am as guilty of it as anybody else. I have a bookshelf with the books, and most of them I hadn't read. Skimmed a bunch of them, but I hadn't read, nearly as many books as I own, and that's just part. Yeah,
I have a to be read pile. So somebody tells me about a great book or whatever, and I'll buy it and I put it in the to be read pile.
To be read. That's right. To be read. So, but I honor that, so, I mean, I'm of course thrilled when I actually get, it's oddly now a lot on Instagram with the new book, even though I'm not a big Instagrammer, I get a lot of people actually, cause I put my Instagram account in there, who actually message me and say something about creating progress in a world of change, because we sold a bunch of bulk copies that went all over the world at one time. A few months back.
Yeah, well, so another author one time showed me. I don't know how they got it. They had like a heat map of where all their books sold.
That's cool. I would love that. You mentioned that heat map. That's another big thing is when you do get a book out, it's to get that heat going in your local community. Given those talks, given those free talks, and those free talks, you can sell the books back of the room. But then you're also getting better. Which should be when you write a book, you're writing maybe some stuff you hadn't actually got out and flexed your your speaking muscle talking about. Yeah. So especially with me in that first book back in the day, I spoke at I did the Luby's and IHOP circuit, and I spoke at every one. So then when the big opportunity came for me to speak at New York Life, me needing footage, I was able to bring in a film crew, and I was on, man. I was on because I'd done tons of free talks and worked it out to where it was a good, speech. So and made some money back in the room. I was selling, $20. You've heard that statement too. Everybody got a $20 bill. It's not really as important now with credit cards, but I'd always try to have a $20 package, a book and a CD, or 2 books, and so people would always snag that together.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that brings up an interesting comment because the book can be a launching off point for change, right? So I've had that experience, right? You write about a topic, you have expertise in it, you write about it, but then when you start speaking about it, you get put in front of new audiences with new questions, new ideas, and it really starts an evolution, which then potentially becomes a second edition, becomes a different book. It opens up a whole lot of doors, but you being an author gets you invited to speak places, and then you speak places. And that allows you to then, develop your ideas deeper and become more of an expert.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So obviously you've done that, right? You wrote the books, you weren't really worried about the speaking fees day one, right? It was like, let's build the book, let's build the brand. And then now you're kind of reaping a lot of those dividends down the line.
Well, I was trying to. I had the demo. It was a great first official demo. It was really good, but it just didn't give the people booking me enough to push. It wasn't enough of a differentiator. So it was really when that first book came out and how well it was packaged that then they were able to go back and look at so then it started. But I certainly the first 3 or 4 years but I got the conviction
right
in my soul after I'd bumped up my head against the realities that a book was something I had to have.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was pushed by my coaches. My coaches were like, you got to write a book. You have to get a book. You need a book. It's going to help you. And I finally reluctantly gave in and started writing and came out my first book. And yeah, it doesn't magically change everything overnight, but it then does open doors. I don't know how many speeches or interviews I was authored because I wrote a book.
Right. Yeah. No, you got to get behind it and don't get discouraged, you gotta, you always have, you gotta keep going. I mean, it's new to the person who hasn't heard about it, as I've mentioned. And, so you got to, get a good book, package it great, get everything you can get on it, and then, get it out there and keep getting it out there. Cause, unless you have a big, big name or a big budget or something, it's
Right.
going to be a long,
it's
positive thing. I don't take that as a negative. I've had a good, career as a speaker and an author, and there's a good chunk of people in a 5-mile radius of where I'm sitting right now who've never heard of my books.
Yeah,
that's not bad. That's good.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people get frustrated, and part of it's just the industry, right? People will, a book does amazing things, but a lot of people oversell what it will do overnight. It just
right.
Unless you have a huge promotion campaign, a huge promotion budget, and you massive rollout, you're stuck, right? I mean, you're going to take time to kind of build the momentum, and it's going to piece at a time.
If you've written a good book, I mean, I'm challenged sometimes when people tell me what the topic is they want to write about. I'm like, I'm encouraging you to go for it, but I don't know your market on who's interested in reading that. I write a book that I believe that the business market would be interested in hearing my thoughts on.
Yeah, talk about that. I think that's a great topic too, is this balance. I mean, obviously you have to have some passion about your topic, right? You're not going to write a book about something you know nothing about or something you don't care about. You want to care about it, but then you also want to balance that with listening to your customers, listening to your clients. I mean, that's kind of how I came up with topics for my books, is I listen to what people are talking about and what people are asking questions about. And I say, wow, they must need a book on that.
Yeah.
So how do you balance those in your world, Dean? I mean, how do you figure out, well, I'm really passionate about this, or I'm interested in this, versus this is what the market's telling me?
Well, I guess I was fortunate. I'm really interested in psychology, which is really what both these books are about. Psychology, the psychology of how we make decisions. But if I would write a book, it would, besides the autobiography of Dean Lindsay, which I'm sure many people would like to read, I probably want to write a book about, movies and movie posters and the histories of movie posters of the circus or vaudeville. Right. I mean, that's my jam. I'd get into, the day Mick met, Keith. That'd be the stuff I'd be wanting to, dig into. Well, actually, the Keith and Mick book, somebody might want to. They might actually want. I'm not sure write that one, but the rest of them was just some deep dive into, Dean's, interest. Dean's top 100 movies, type of thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll talk about it if anybody wants to listen, but I guess I want to make I want to be. I guess I'm interested in being helpful. Yes. I do get my style in my books. It's not dry. I study, research, and chew on everything, and then say it the way I want to say it. But it's it's a lot of timeless principles. I'm throwing out a few new things, or maybe something is so uniquely stated or whatever that it seems new. But anything you really say in a book, especially around business, is going to come down to care and somewhat of something around the golden rule.
Well, yeah, and so much of that's true, and I think people need to take that to heart, right? I mean, it's your take, it's your style on it, and I guess this is true as an author and a speaker. You're looking for those people that resonate with you, right? That benefit from your style and your way of presenting things. So, even though maybe some of these timeless principles have been presented by other authors, you can still go out there and present them in a new way and add a lot of value, because somebody's going to think your way and they're going to really take it home.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're shaking them up and they go, hey, I've heard that said in a different way. And it just, sometimes what's interesting about cliches? A lot of cliches don't hit because they're quote unquote cliches, but they're kind of good, Right. Early to bed, early to rise, penny saved, penny earned, those are good stuff.
Right. So it's truth, right? So, Dean, if you're the you're the viewer out there that's theoretically watching this, and you're thinking about
Theoretically, I thought you said we had people watching this.
no,
On the vest and everything.
No, you're the guy. You're the person. You're the next person that clicks on this link on YouTube.
Okay, good. I got millions and millions of people checking this out.
You're the next one. You're watching Dean Lindsay and Shawn McBride talking, and you're thinking about maybe doing a book. What would you say they should do next if you're at that cusp? You're saying, do I write a book or do I not write a book? What do you
ever had somebody ask you that question? How to write a book?
I always tell them get started.
That's funny. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's people always asking me. And I know as soon as, that's the other thing I'm surprised about. As soon as you are an author, people want to tell me, I've always wanted to write a book. How would you go about? Yeah, you got to write. You need to write. Yeah, so you need to write.
Yeah, there's this mental block with people about writing a book, and it's really there are a lot of different ways you can write a book. But I've every time I've done it, and I'm working on a couple right now. But you just take your topic, you break it into chapters, and you subdivide the chapters, and you start writing.
I'll give you a couple of things that I do. So I try to write in a big block. I'm not good at like 2 hours a day type of thing. Yeah. I chunk down 4 weeks. I'm going to write this book, and I make that my schedule, and I treat myself surprisingly to a movie in the evening if I've had all the run in the morning, work all day. And then when I get up to start working on the book, if I get to a place where I've written something that I think is pretty good, but I know I got a lot more, I want to research more and add more and do that, I do it all in Word. Mm-hmm. Another little thing I do, I'll finish this one first. I know I'm not done with that part, but I'm also tired of that page. I'm not going to work on that page today. All right. But I knew I got to get back to it. I'll bold it and put it in red. So then on the morning, if I'm going back and look at something, I'll look at my whole document. I can see where the different red places are. And I go, okay, I'll mess with that today. So I'm not writing a book linearly. It can go, I'm piecemealing it together and it keeps going out. One other thing that I do that I'm interested to hear if you've heard anybody else do, since I am my own publisher, I am World Gumbo Publishing. They're on my books. And I've learned not only I publish other people's books as well. I've already decided the page count that I'm shooting for, and also even more importantly, the size of the book, whether the book is going to be 5.5 by 8.5 or 6 by 9 or 6 by 6. And so I actually trim before I'm starting to write the book, I trim my Word doc down to that. So I'm actually creating the book as I write it. So I lay it all out. So I know exactly what I'm shooting for and where I'm going as I'm crafting it. So those are a couple of things that I do to get to where I'm headed.
Yeah, no, I love it. And there's a lot of different styles out there. There's no right or wrong answer, right? I mean, there's different ways to draft it. I mean, I'm with you. I don't do linear either. I literally lay the stuff out and and I'll know where I'm going, and I may jump in and do some of the middle chapters or some of the end chapters, and I work back to the front depending on kind of what's current, what I'm doing research on, or what I have information on at the time, and I'll just go knock a chapter out. You don't have to overthink it. I guess is the big thing for the audience members. Don't overthink it. Just jump into it and start working it.
And then just get behind it, and also you got to have conviction. Pat Benatar says, with the power of conviction, there is no sacrifice. I did not want to write a book.
Yeah.
I knew I needed to have a book.
Yes.
I knew I had the conviction. I knew my life, my family's life, my business life would get a lot more interesting and smoother and rewarding on all fronts.
Yes.
When Dino got a book. And so
I think that makes a lot of sense. That was my experience too, is I jumped out there because, it was part of the business necessity. I think a lot of us too, and it sounds like you've hit that point too. Once you pull off the Band-Aid of doing the first book, then it becomes a lot less scary and it becomes a lot more doable. And a lot of authors then say, well, I can write a second book about this topic, or the world needs this topic, right? So, but it's just a matter of getting started and saying, I'm going to do this, making the commitment. And that's one of the things people love about authors, as you mentioned earlier, right?
You finished it. Well, that's interesting. And I haven't thought about this for a while, but most of the stuff was in the second book that became these two books.
Yep.
I had right at the beginning when I was writing Cracking the Networking Code. I purposely did not write the Progress Challenge first because I wasn't sure if I could get my head all the way around it and finish it. So I chose to write a book on networking because I knew I could finish it, and at the same time learn publishing and how to write a book. So I introduced a little bit of the concept of progress and change, and that I did back in that first book. But really, it was a way for me to gain the prowess of everything I talked about word count, page count, and all that other the other things about how I relationships with book manufacturers and and all that stuff. So maybe not bite off too much, maybe try to find a topic that that you can really get your head around. I'm always still challenged to try to finish a book on customer service because I don't know, when do you either it could be one page or when do you stop? There's just so much to say, or you have nothing to say. Back to care, so that guy that wrote Good to Great, Collins, I think Jim Collins, I think supposedly he said that he could have written that book in less than 25 pages, but the publishers wanted we need some more vowels.
Yeah.
So
and Good to Great, interesting. I mean, a timeless classic, lots of great ideas in there, but then a lot of people went back and criticized it later because so many of the profile companies had trouble, right? They were doing great for a while, and then
that's another thing is everything but staying in flux in that regard. So I mean, there's but what, Jim got enough out of it. I'm hoping for Jim.
Exactly. I mean, it keeps his name in circulation today, right? I mean,
big time.
Everybody thinks about Good to Great, so I mean, there's always the possibility of having that blockbuster, and a lot of people that comes over time, right? So you don't necessarily have to, like you say, don't have to have the blockbuster first one out at bat, right? You can build up to it over time.
Or might not be a book that anybody hears about, but you still sold,
a lot
20, a bunch of copies without anybody knowing. It's a big old planet.
I know a lot of authors that go out there and it's just 1,000 books at this conference, 500 books at that conference, 500 books at this conference, and next thing you know, you're talking about a big number.
Yeah.
All right, Dean. Well, it's been very, very informative. You've mentioned both of your books. Why don't you just go a little deeper on what they're about in case it's resonating with somebody, maybe they want to grab a copy or bring you in at a conference here.
You bet. Well, the first one, Big Fat Goals.
Yep.
Goes like that.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, it is. It's a book on goal commitment. It discusses, instead of goal setting, goal crafting, and it lays out some exercises and thought processes around how to continually commit to your goals so that you'll continually act towards them. FAT is an acronym for pretty hot and tempting. So again, that book did really well, won the Business Class News Editor's Choice Book of the Year. It's also listed as one of the 21 books, 21 best books on goal setting on psychology, positivepsychology.com. And it got the official recommendation from the Florida PTA as a book that every middle school and high school student should read. That's that book. Yeah, thanks. And the cool thing on the back endorsements for it, just to talk to you about endorsements, Frank Shankowitz, one of the creators and the co-founders of Make-A-Wish Foundation, he endorsed the book. And Catherine Munson, Fat Signs, she's the CEO of Fat Signs. She liked the book so much that she had me at her conference. I spoke at her conference. So there's that. And then the other book, Creating Progress in a World of Change, this takes a much deeper dive into how the psychology of how we make decisions, how we view things as either progress or change. I get deeply into the 6 Ps of progress, and also introduce you to the work of, or some people have heard of him, Dr. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist and Holocaust survivor. And the couple cool things about this book, not only the great endorsement from the great Vince Vicente, Olympian and New York Times bestselling author, but on the back cover, Dr. Jay Levinson, a different Jay Levinson, was Dr. Viktor Frankl's assistant. The last 20 years of his life, read this manuscript and wrote me a really rocking endorsement saying that I was, kind of able to take Frankl's thoughts and, kind of add on to them. So, but thank you. And you can go to my website, deanlindsay.com. And that's Dean Lindsay AY at the end there. And thank you, Shawn.
No, man, that's perfect. And you did a great job there of connecting how a book can help you do more things down the line. So it's perfect. Thanks for such a great informative interview, Dean. I really appreciate it. You circulate on the internet, folks. Check Dean out, and then also make sure you subscribe to the McBride for Business YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist with a series of these interviews being built right now, and you can check out old ones and past ones. And we'll have a book coming up for you in the near future to help you figure out how to build the business plan around your book. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Dean, for such great work. Pat yourselves on the back for the hard work, and we'll see you